Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, whenever you might be listening to this or watching this. It's the Common Good Podcast. It's Tuesday. We're going to talk about politics like we always do on Tuesdays. Our fearless leader is not with us today. He is somewhere outside of, I don't know, somewhere in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, yeah.
That's right. Driving home from a wedding, apparently. So Dan, Deitrich, hello. Good to see you today. I'm Robb Ryerse. I'm in Springdale, Arkansas. Dan, you're South Bend, Indiana.
South Bend, Indiana. Yep.
Doug always likes to talk about the weather, but I'm not sure.
I don't care what it's doing there, Rob.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Seriously. But hope you're doing well. It's Tuesday. It's a Tuesday in August, which means it's election day. It's primary day. And there are a lot of states, several states that are going to be choosing candidates today for their respective parties in all sorts of offices to show up on the ballot in November. So today we've got Arizona is going to the polls, Kansas, Missouri, Michigan, and Washington. So a lot of states voting today, and there's some big stuff. Dan, have you heard about this "Value Them Both" amendment in Kansas?
No, but I feel like I saw some billboards with that message.
Yeah. So what's going on in Kansas is so the Kansas Supreme Court ruled several years ago that the Kansas Constitution includes a right to privacy, which protects women's rights for reproductive choice, reproductive health. Basically, in other words, women in Kansas have a state constitutional right to get an abortion if they so choose. And the Kansas legislature can't do anything about it. So the Kansas legislature has proposed a constitutional amendment called the Value Them Both Amendment, which is will change the Kansas Constitution, giving the legislature the right to legislate about abortion. Which means that they will immediately go into a special session and outlaw abortion in Kansas. And this amendment gives no protection for life of the mother, for any exceptions. It gives the Kansas legislature just carte blanche to make any decision they want, which we kind of all know what they would do.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's called Value Them Both, even though, that's quite a misleading name. But Here's the reason I'm talking about this. So today, there's two really frustrating things about it. One is that the Kansas legislature put this constitutional amendment on the ballot today, which is primary day. They didn't put it on the ballot in November, when most people go to the polls to vote.
Mm-hmm.
They put it on the ballot today so that, they could kind of engineer a victory by having it on a day when, fewer people vote. So that's, one kind of part of the dirty tricks. Second part of the dirty tricks, yesterday, Democratic voters all over Kansas got text messages that said that the Value Them Both amendment to the Constitution of Kansas preserves, protects, gives women the right to choose, make their own choices on reproductive health, and therefore they should vote yes on Value Them Both amendment, which is the exact opposite of the truth. It is a complete and utter lie. Here's exactly what the text said, because a friend of mine got it, so I just brought it up. It says women in Kansas are losing their choice on reproductive rights. Voting yes on the amendment will give women a choice. Vote yes to protect women's health.
Oh my
That's what
gosh.
that's what the text said. And it's the exact opposite of the truth. The
Wow.
Kansas state ethics committee said there's nothing they can do about these texts. No idea who they're coming from, who
Of
paid for them,
course.
who's
Yeah.
sending them.
Who could ever
Um,
know?
yeah. It's so lots of dirty tricks going on in Kansas, lots of bad actors. And there's lots of elections to keep an eye on. And this is a big, some of us have said, I am one of them, said that the best chance for Democrats to hold the House and expand their lead in the Senate uh, was for Roe v. Wade to be overturned, which is not a reason for that to happen, not something that we wanted to happen in any way,
Right.
shape, or form. But the byproduct of that would be energy and excitement, motivation to vote on the Democratic side that would give Democrats a chance to hold the House, hold the Senate. This vote in Kansas today feels like it's really the first opportunity to test that theory, to see if voters are going to be motivated by the opportunity to protect choice. And if they are, what? So this vote in Kansas feels like it's going to be a bellwether for the primaries and what to expect. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on all that?
Yeah. I think you're right that the level of outrage at overturning Roe is definitely going to turn out people. Whether or not it'll turn people out in the primaries where their vote doesn't really count for anything else because they know who's going to win in the general, you know, that is an interesting question. So if people will go out to vote just for this ballot initiative about Roe, that'll say a lot, I think, about the level of engagement of people.
Yeah. 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 But that's not the only interesting race that's happening. There's also this fascinating Senate race in Missouri. And it's really interesting on both sides. We actually are candidates for Common Good, which we'll be announcing another round of candidates for Common Good next week, next Tuesday. And we've got some exciting candidates that are going to be part of that announcement, including some elected officials, which is exciting.
Any candidates named Eric? Any Erics at
So,
all?
well, I was gonna say I feel a little bit like Donald Trump, because our candidates for Common Good, we don't pick sides in primaries. It's not an endorsement; it's an invitation for candidates to say, "Hey, I'll use the common good as my governing criteria," and it is completely conceivable to think that multiple Democratic candidates in a race would think that, and would govern that way. Uh, so we've got actually two candidates for Common Good that are running for the United States Senate in Missouri against each other in the primary.
And that's good because they're
Spence, yeah,
basically
I
saying
was,
we're not mortal enemies. We're
yeah,
competing for a thing,
yep,
but we
yep,
both
yep,
want the same thing.
yeah. Both Spencer Toder and Lance Kuntz are candidates for Common Good. Uh, Spencer and Lance aren't the same name. And it might and you know what, I said Lance because I have done this multiple times now with it's Lucas Coons, not Lance. Lucas Coons. Um, not the same name. So on the Republican side, yesterday Donald Trump truth endorsement of Eric.
Is this like a let's go Brandon situation? Like, let's go Eric?
Oh, it's so funny. So Trump sends out an endorsement of someone in the Senate race in Missouri. Of course, the day before, once he has some sense of who's going to win, he jumps on who he thinks the winner is going to be and endorses that person so he can claim credit, which he's done multiple times now because he's failed so often with his endorsements. Donald Trump sent out this message that he was endorsing for Missouri Senate Eric. Now the problem is both of the leading Republicans in Missouri running for the United States Senate are named Eric. Eric Schmidt, Eric Greitens, and Eric Greitens, you might remember, he's the one who created that ad where he was going to go rhino hunting,
Oh, that guy? Yeah.
That guy, yeah. So Eric Greitens, the former governor of Missouri, who's been accused of domestic abuse and sexual assault, against Eric Schmidt, who is the attorney general of Missouri, who, is an election denier and climate denier, science denier, all that stuff. So it's just take your pick.
So
with
either
these
Eric seems like Trump's kind of guy, but he doesn't clarify. He doesn't, like, a day has gone by and he hasn't clarified. And so you get both Erics claiming the endorsement.
Yeah, so Eric Schmidt says, "Hey, I'm grateful for President Trump's endorsement." Eric Greitens says, "I'm honored to receive President Trump's endorsement." Oh my goodness. And he hasn't it's so funny.
So at this point, Trump's probably going to wait till after the primary and say, yeah, the guy that won, that was my Eric.
Exactly.
Because he doesn't like to pick a loser.
Oh my goodness. It's like we're living if the writers of Veep had come up with this
Right.
as a plot, we would be like, oh, this is just silly.
That's outlandish.
But it's actually happening. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I feel like every day is a bad episode of Veep at this point.
Yeah. When on Inauguration Day, Doug and I were in Washington, D.C., and we had an episode of the final episode of a podcast we used to do called This Guy's Got to Go, in which we would talk about how Donald Trump needed to go. And so for our final episode, after we watched Donald Trump fly away in his helicopter, leaving the White House, which was a really glorious thing to watch, by the way, watching him actually go, I put together this list of the craziest things that happened in the Trump administration over 4 years. And I was going to do a top 10 list. We did a top 10 list, and then we had 25 honorable mentions because there were so many crazy things that happened. Like remember that time he looked at the solar eclipse? I mean, so many things, so many crazy things happened. I think, endorsing two Erics, like, this would make the list. This is such a hilarious thing that has taken place. And the fact that he has, do you think he just did this stupidly and is now like, oh yeah, I meant to do this? Or do you think that he, there's some, is Trump playing, 3D chess while we're playing checkers here? Like, what's your take, Dan?
I don't think he's playing checkers. I don't think he gave it any more
commitment.
thought than he heard the name Eric. Someone said, Eric's my guy. He pressed send on a casual endorsement truth tweet. And now, like, every other decision or thing he said on Twitter or any public sphere, he has to pretend like he meant to do this. And he will double down and go down with the ship. Like the inauguration photos of, like, I had a bigger crowd than Obama. And then people show the photos that clearly show he did not have a larger crowd.
Yeah.
But he has fake photos. Yeah. It's like,
Dan, this could be, this is just like reminisce about crazy Trump. Do you remember the time that he drew the like path of the hurricane with a Sharpie on the map? Because he had said,
it's like,
like, no, buddy, you can't just modify the map because
looked
you
like a kindergartner
misspoke.
drew the.
Oh, so funny.
Yeah.
Oh, Donald Trump. What are we gonna do when he's gone?
Just live our lives.
Well, listen. Let's move on.
Peace.
Let's move on to some serious business.
Yeah.
So the president has COVID, and then got it again. This everybody's talking about like the rare rebound case. I don't know, Dan. Like if this were Donald Trump having like in this situation, we would be questioning the reality of all of this, wouldn't we?
Yeah, it'd be. I mean, with Trump, you question everything.
Yeah.
You question whether Melania was actually standing next to him or if it was a stand-in. You remember that whole thing? It was like, is that really her? Is she? Just the littlest insignificant things you have to.
Yeah.
Like, is that really what's happening right now?
Yeah. So,
but Biden's getting better, and I don't know if you saw the comparison tweets of statements when Trump got COVID, Vice President Biden, then not in office at all, tweeted out some nice like, "Hey, we're all praying for the president, hoping for a speedy recovery." Just a normal thing to say, even about a political opponent.
Yes.
And Trump's thing is just like, just taking
he's gonna die.
Just the most insensitive, like petty, childish, like so presidential. That's the day he became president.
Yeah.
To me.
Well, while Joe Biden has been recovering from COVID twice now, it seems like he's getting some stuff done, which is, a big encouragement for those of us that want Democrats to hold the House and expand their lead in the Senate. So part of that kind of getting stuff done, it looks like they're on track to pass a major climate and healthcare bill that was, originally a part of the Build Back Better Act that was foiled by Joe Manchin and his refusal to get on board with the president's agenda. Now Chuck Schumer, majority leader of the Senate, Democratic leader of the Senate, has worked out a deal with Joe Manchin and got him on board on a couple of big parts of the president's agenda, giving some concessions like a new pipeline through West Virginia and, a bunch of stuff that makes me a little queasy. But I understand, politics is what politics is. So, the president is poised to have a pretty big victory if Democrats can get Kristen Sinema to go along with it. Democratic senator from Arizona.
I'm very glad there's any movement at all about climate change because this is the looming emergency of our generation
Mm-hmm.
that is going to drastically impact our kids and grandkids,
Yep.
and is currently impacting us, whether we want to admit it or not.
Yep.
So I'm glad there's movement at all. Really annoyed that everyone had to kowtow to Joe Manchin and carve things out for him, and just so annoying that so many things have been held up by this one guy that I guess he's a Democrat on paper, but doesn't seem to be on board with any of the Democratic platform. So
Yeah, for sure. And it's,
but do you think
for
Cinema
those,
now is going to be like,
for,
oh, my
I,
turn to hold
I,
it up?
yeah, I think so. I mean, she has not indicated how she's going to vote, and they can't. They're not going to be able to move forward without her vote. It is required because of the razor thin margin that they have of 50-50 Senate. You need all 50 Democrats to go along with it,
Yeah.
or it's not going to happen. So I think at some point it feels like, okay, you made your point, you made your stand last year and scuttled this, but now we're in an election year, and it is not just, we're within 100 days of the election, and this is absolutely critical. I think the screws get turned a little bit, and my guess is Kristen Sinema will come around, and Democrats will have some legislation to run on. They should have had expanding care for veterans, but that got scuttled by Republicans who apparently don't care that our veterans are traumatized by not physically, emotionally, in every way by their experiences. Particularly, Dan, how familiar were you with this whole burn pit thing? This wasn't something I was familiar with until the Jon Stewart episode
Yeah.
on his new show that came out. Um, and the reason I even watched that episode is because one of my friends was on it.
Oh, wow.
There's a guy who ran for Congress in New York City named Isaiah James, and Isaiah is just I just love him. He's one of those people that I just adore, and he was a congressional candidate in 2020 in New York City. Didn't win, but he was on the panel that Jon Stewart had on that episode talking about burn pits. And then as a result of that, Isaiah got invited to the White House to talk about burn pits and his experience of being a soldier, where basically like what happens is, like, when we're at war, they set up like these burn pits and just burn whatever. And
Yeah, there's no trash
soldiers,
service, and so they got to get rid of all this stuff. They pour diesel fuel and jet fuel on it and burn it.
yeah. And veterans have experienced horrible side effects as a result of living and breathing and existing next to these burn pits. And Isaiah, my friend Isaiah, is one of them. Well, so this bill was going to address some of that, and I'm like, come on, this is like an easy bipartisan,
Yeah.
everybody on board for this thing. And enough Republicans voted to block it.
And what's
And it
weird,
got,
correct me if go ahead.
yeah, so what they have is, in the Senate, there's what's called a cloture vote, which closes the debate on a bill. And you have to have 60 votes for cloture. And then once you close the debate, then the bill goes to basically an up or down vote and that's like 50-50. So you have to get 60 votes to close the debate. And it's basically, okay, is it time to vote on this yet? Well, I think it was 42 Republicans voted against that. They could only get 58 votes to close the debate, and so it basically killed the bill that right there. Um, and it's just mind-boggling to me why Senate Republicans would do this. And there's been Senate Republicans who have read the bill and have talked about in the news, like, listen, there is nothing else in it. So people like Ted Cruz and others have claimed that this bill is filled with pork and isn't really about veterans. Other Republican senators have said no, that absolutely not the
Yeah.
case.
It's actually just about veterans, and all the money is designated in that it has to go to what it says it's going for.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz tried to say, like, oh, they did this little, sleight of hand trick and moved the money from discretionary to designated. There's a great clip of Jon Stewart, who's on the screen and has been an advocate throughout this, saying, like, that is a flat out lie. It's always been designated, and designated is good because discretionary means you can use it for whatever. So designated means it has to be spent on veterans' health. So I don't get why people like Ted Cruz and 42 others are against this.
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw the video of, we had a conversation, I don't know if it was last week or a couple weeks ago, about Joe Biden fist bumping the leader of Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince.
Yep.
And what that meant. After this vote was taken, a couple of Republican senators, Ted Cruz and another guy, were seen fist bumping each other on the floor of the United States Senate.
Did not
celebrating.
See that. Yeah.
Celebrating. Now, like, if we're going to get upset about a fist bump, that's a fist bump I can get upset about. Because what it indicates is that these Republican senators are putting, in my estimation, putting political calculations against ahead of, like, the needs of people. And listen, I can say, like, okay, we could have a conversation of whether or not it's the government's job to provide health care, if that's a right for everybody, free, quality health care, free. We could have that discussion. I tend to think it is. I think people should just be able to live healthy lives, but we could have that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about veterans, people who served our country, volunteered to do so, and are being affected by things outside of their control, burn pits impacting their health, burn pits, like, this is on the job. It's a requirement of their service to be next to these burn pits. Like we have there is no discussion of whether or not these folks need to be helped. There's no discussion. Like, this is like,
and why has it taken this long? Like, this has been, many of these vets have been sick for years. Many of them have died waiting for healthcare coverage. It's just mind-boggling to me that the Republicans, who are so pro-troop, support the troops, haven't jumped on this to say, of course we're going to support our men and women that we sent into harm's way, even when it wasn't bullets that were harming them.
Yes. Yeah. Just infuriating.
Yeah.
And infuriated by the fist bump celebration of it. Like, we are going to keep veterans from getting the help that they need. We're going to keep Democrats from having any kind of political victory. Well, listen, get on board with this and make it like, you get 100 votes for this thing in the Senate, and you know who gets the political victory for it? Everybody.
Right.
Everybody. Like, there's one of two ways to like steal this away from Democrats as a political victory. Either kill it and kill veterans in the process,
Literally, yeah.
or get everybody on board and everybody celebrates it.
Uh-huh.
They, of course, chose the path of cruelty.
Yeah. Even politically, I don't understand. Are they trying to
Yeah.
use this as a like political bargaining tool? Like, hey, we'll pass this if you do this for us.
I mean, I think the reality is a couple of things. One is Jon Stewart was involved in this issue, and there's a lot of, pent up Republican rage against anybody in the quote unquote liberal media, which Jon Stewart would be a part of that. I think there's also the calculation that people don't pay attention, and that like giving the president or the Democrats any kind of victory is a greater danger that there would be backlash based on their actions, because I think the calculation is that this happened in July. Who's paying attention really?
Well, I think it might backfire on him this time. I'm hoping it does.
I hope so.
I think Jon Stewart is right. He gave this righteous, angry statement after this all went down and said, like, I'm used to the incompetence. I'm used to the two-faced, like, hypocrisy. Yeah. He's like, I'm not used to the cruelty. Yeah. These people are cowards. And these Republican senators will not meet with veterans groups. That's what's crazy to me. Like, they won't meet with the people that they are voting against. And yet somehow they're still the pro-military, back our troops people.
Yeah. That's the ability of the Republicans to co-opt patriotism is just infuriating. And this ties into like January 6th. Like, to think that what happened on January 6th in the insurrection was in any way motivated by love of country, it was not. Like, this is like, I live in Arkansas, and I always say this to Doug, and it kind of blows his mind. A day doesn't go by that I don't see a Confederate flag. Mm-hmm. Every single day I see a Confederate flag on the back of a pickup truck, on somebody's hat, on flying in front of somebody's house. Every single day I see a Confederate flag.
Yeah.
And to think but the Confederates, like, these folks, they think that they're so patriotic. They think they love America. And it's just like, wait a minute, what in the world? And, you look at the events of January 6th and like, you think you are protecting the election, stopping the steal. Like, you're actually damaging democracy, right, damaging the country, demonstrating the contempt that you have for freedom in our country. It is so infuriating. And there's some sense of like, is the January 6th commission, is it gonna make any difference? I don't know. We'll see. What has made the difference for one individual though is going through the legal process. And so one of the people that stormed the Capitol was convicted and sentenced this week to 7 years in prison for his involvement in the insurrection. I think this is important for a couple of reasons. One is it shows that sentences, punishments are getting more and more serious.
As the second walking up the food chain kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Second thing that I found interesting, one of the jaw-dropping things from the January 6 hearings was the revelation that Secret Service and Donald Trump knew that many people were armed and carrying firearms at the Ellipse at the Stop the Steal rally, and then told by Donald Trump to march to the Capitol and fight like hell. Donald Trump knew that those folks were armed. This man was convicted of carrying a handgun on Capitol grounds. So I like that. Like there seems to be some connection there, which I think that's important.
Mm-hmm.
I think this shows that beyond the rhetoric of the Trump supporters calling these folks political prisoners, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and others have done, there's the realization that, like, okay, the political rhetoric is one thing, the legal process is something that, like, can't be stymied. And whether you're Steve Bannon or this guy or, fingers crossed, Donald Trump, you can't outrun the law.
Yeah.
Forever. Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully is the key word there. It seems like, I mean, there's people in prison for 20 years or life because of 3 strikes, nonviolent drug offenses, Like there's people in jail for way longer for way less. Seems like storming the Capitol for an insurrection to damage democracy and prevent the peaceful transfer of power would warrant, a sentence of 7 years or more. I'm sort of shocked that more people haven't been sentenced for longer, but
yeah, you would think. Well, Dan, I don't know. You got any other stories you want to talk about? Do we want to talk about the killing of Bin Laden's number 2 guy?
I don't want to spend a lot of time about it. Joe Biden will kind of take credit, and Republicans will downplay that. But yeah.
Though I encourage folks to check out, apparently, the CIA weapon that was used to get this guy is called the Kinetic Hellfire R9X. Which, Dan, I texted this to you so you can see it.
I see the diagram.
It apparently is a missile that doesn't have a warhead with explosives. It has blades that swing out at the last moment, and so that only one person is killed by this missile. Just insane. Listen, I'm not like pro-war or anything in any way, shape, or form, because I don't know. I believe Jesus. But I would much rather, if the government insists, I would much rather we use things like this that don't have the collateral damage of, killing all sorts of innocent folks that get caught up because they're, around those who are targeted.
Right. And apparently Biden, throughout the planning process, was very actively involved to a granular level and insisted that this only be carried out if there were an almost guarantee of no civilian casualties. And so that even the people living in the house with this bad guy cannot be harmed. And so they came up with like this throwing knife missile.
It's like, you go to like the axe throwing place that's popped up in your town, and you drink a beer and you throw the axe. It's like there's CIA guys going, oh, I wonder if we could put this on a missile. And then they did. So I mean, this is crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it's a crazy world that we live in, Dan.
It is.
But we're gonna keep doing good. Keep watching elections and seeing what's happening. If you're in Kansas today, make sure you go out and you vote no on the amendment, the value of them both amendment. If you're in Michigan or Missouri or Washington or any place else that's voting today, make sure you head out and vote. Lots of big decisions to make on who's going to represent us and lead us. So,
and shout out to everyone in the chat.
Yep.
JFJ Live asks, are you live or no? Yes, we are. Sorry,
Yeah.
we just didn't get around to engaging with some of the comments. David Johnson said, maybe one of the funniest jokes of all time. You guys are definitely the common bad. Little play on our name of common good. He spun it around.
Good on you,
Very
David.
clever. You guys the common bad. All right, great.
Good
And
stuff.
Trisha is also confused. She says, I don't get the Confederate flag. They lost. Yeah, same. That's don't get it either. But thanks for sticking around. Thanks for being with us today. And we'll see y'all tomorrow. Rob, you got anything else?
No, I'm good.
All right. Take care, everybody.